Hello, Algebra 2 students. My husband came down with COVID, so I'm home for a couple weeks, which will be interesting, but we will make it work. Please don't check out. I know it's different having just my voice instead of my person in front of you, but you are capable of this. I'm going to teach the lessons. I'm going to go over the homework. It's going to be great. Just stay engaged, okay? That will be the best thing for everyone. Okay, so we're going to start by going over questions from, what was this? The 6.3b assignment. So I'm just going to brush through some of the ones that I feel like we need to focus on. So this first one, we're just subtracting. 6 cube root of 3 minus 2 times the cube root of 3. As long as your index or root and your radicand are the same, you can do it. So we're going to do 6 minus 2 is 4 times the cube root of 3. Okay, now this one's different. This is a cube or a square root of x and a square root of y. You can't combine those, so your answer is exactly what you see there. There is no more simplifying that can be done with that. Okay, number 18. When you are simplifying this, the first thing we want to do is we want to break this into our perfect square, not perfect square. Don't forget about the 14 out in front. So the square root of 4 and the square root of 5, which means you're doing 14 times 2 times the square root of 5, or 28 times the square root of 5. Okay, and then we're going to subtract from that what this simplifies to. So it's 3. This would be the square root of 25 times the square root of 5. So that's 3 times 5 times the square root of 5, or 15 times the square root of 5. So this is where we're at right now. And then we can just simplify that by subtracting that coefficient piece. So 28 minus 15 is 13 rad 5, and that will be your simplest answer. Number 22. Fourth roots always tend to be a little trickier for some. So think about what could be a fourth root. The fourth root of 32, we can break into fourth root of 16 times the fourth root of 2. And then plus, this one again, we can do 16 and 3. So this is going to simplify to 2 fourth root 2, plus this is 2 fourth root 3. And because these radicands are different, that's as simple as you can go with it. Okay. And if you're not sure on fourth roots, just check what's 2 to the 4th, what's 3 to the 4th, what's 4 to the 4th. Plug those into your calculator, and then those are the numbers you would have to divide by. It's typically pretty low, a 2, a 3, maybe a 4. They don't go too high. Okay, and then last two, let's do 39 and 43. So 39, you have the square root of 75. Let me make sure. Yeah, we're just simplifying. So square root of 75, I'm just going to go up with it again like this. We would do the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. So that's going to be 5 rad 3 plus, and then the square root of 48, we're going to go 2, and then 16 and 3. So that's 2 times 4, or 8, times the square root of 3, and then minus 5 times the square root of 3, just like you see here. So 5 rad 3 plus 8 rad 3 minus 5 rad 3 is going to be 8 rad 3. Okay, number 43, we're going to break that down. This one, I'm just going to break it down under here real small, sorry. Cube root of 8 times the cube root of 2. Don't forget about the 3 out in front. So this is 3. Cube root of 8 is 2. So 3 times 2 is 6 times the cube root of 2. Okay. This one, we'll zoom in a little here. This one will do 4 times the cube root of 27 and the cube root of 2. So this is 4 times 3, or 12. Notice we're subtracting, so it's going to be minus 12 times the cube root of 2. And then this last one, we're going to break into the cube root of 64 and the cube root of 2. Cube root of 64 is 4, so that's 4 plus, right? We're adding, plus 4 times the cube root of 2. So they all have the same index or root. This number, by the way, is the index. It's the root also. So I kind of use both terms. I mean, they mean the same thing. So 6 minus 12 plus 4. So this would be a negative 6 plus 4 is a negative 2. And then we have the cube root of 2. And that would be your simplified answer. Okay. So those are some of the questions that I typically get on the homework. If you have other ones, feel free to ask a neighbor. You have lots of people around you that are very good at this stuff. So don't be bashful. You can do it. Okay. If you need a 2-minute break here, you can pause the video. If not, we're going to just jump right into the notes. Okay. So 6.3a was all adding and subtracting binomial radical expressions. Now we're going to be multiplying and dividing. So we're just picking up kind of in the middle of those 6.3 notes where it says multiply, divide. So go ahead and find that right here if you haven't already. It should be where we left off after Friday. So the first thing we're going to do with this is we are going to FOIL. Actually, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute, and then I'm going to show you how to FOIL and some of the details that can sometimes get mixed up with this. So let's distribute first. So if we distribute this 5 to both of these things, it's going to be 5 rad 2 plus 5 times 3, which is 15. It's tempting to call that 20 rad 2, but you can't. If one has a radical and the other term does not, you cannot combine them. Only if they're the same radical can you combine them. Okay, so that's as simple as you can go on that one. Letter B, now it's a binomial times a binomial, and when you have that, you're going to FOIL. So what we do here is we take the first, 3 times 2 is 6, the outside, 3 times rad 5, so that's plus 3 rad 5. The inside, that's 2 rad 5, and that's plus, both of those are positive. So plus 2 rad 5, and then last is a positive rad 5 times a positive rad 5. You're welcome to write that as the square root of 25, or if you just know a radical times itself is always the radicand, the number underneath, you can just write that as 5 right now. So it'll be 6 plus 5 is 11. And then 3 rad 5 plus 2 rad 5 is 5 rad 5. So 11 plus 5 rad 5 is as simple as you can go. Don't call that 16 rad 5. One has a radical, one does not. You cannot combine those. Okay, sorry, my dog is wandering around. My son's trying to contain him. Letter C here is one that people get confused on a lot. So I am going to make this very bold and tell you what not to do, okay? This is not the square root of 2 squared minus the square root of 3 squared, okay? You cannot just distribute that squared when we're doing subtraction between, okay? So don't just distribute it. What you need to do is you need to think of it as a binomial squared. So think of it as this, the square root of 2 minus the square root of 3 times the square root of 2 minus the square root of 3, okay? And when you see it that way, then it's like, oh yes, we need to FOIL. So we're going to FOIL this. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. Again, you can just call that 2 right off the bat if you want. The square root of 2 times the square root of negative 3 is a negative rad 6. Then inside is the same thing. Negative rad 3 times rad 2 is a negative rad 6. And then your last, be careful here, you have a negative and a negative. So when you multiply those together, it's going to be a positive. Rad 3 times rad 3 is rad 9, or again, you can just call that 3. This, a negative rad 6 minus rad 6, remember there's this 1 out in front essentially. Negative 1 minus 1 is a negative 2 rad 6, and then this is plus 3. So if we simplify that, you have 2 plus 3 is 5, and then minus 2 rad 6, and that's as simple as we can go. Don't subtract any further. One's a radical, one is not, so you cannot combine those. Okay, so that's C, and then letter D here is set up as 2 binomials again. So we're going to FOIL one more time. This will be careful here, 3 times 2 is 6, rad 7 times rad 7 is 7, right? The square root of 49, which is 7. So you have 6 times 7 as that first term, which is going to be 42. Okay, so that's your first. Then we go outside, so plus 3 rad 7. Then we go inside. I should have done binomial Benny for you, huh? Oh well. Plus 5 times 2 is 10 rad 7. And then we go last. So plus 5 times 1 is 5. Now simplify from there. So you have 42 plus 5 is 47. And then 3 rad 7 plus 10 rad 7 is plus 13 rad 7. And again, don't combine those. That's as much as you can do, and you are done. Okay, this last chunk here is all about conjugates, and we've talked about conjugates before. Remember when we did complex numbers, you don't need to write this down because I'm not trying to confuse you by telling you something different. But when we did complex numbers, we did this, right? A plus BI, and then the conjugate was A minus BI. And if you recall, there was a shortcut. You could FOIL it, but if you took the shortcut, it was A squared plus B squared. Because when you multiply your lasts, I times I is I squared, which is negative 1, times this negative became positive, right? Okay, that's similar to what we're going to do today, but now because there's no I, it's going to end up being A squared minus B squared, okay? So if you look at this, I'm going to show you by foiling it first, but then I'll show you that it is in fact going to be A squared minus B squared. So if we FOIL this, A times A is A squared. A times a negative rad B is a negative A rad B. Rad B times A is going to be a positive A rad B. And then this is going to be the square root of B times a negative square root of B. So that's going to be minus the square root of B squared. So essentially what you're doing is you're squaring the first, you're squaring the A, you're squaring your B value, which in this case is a radical. This becomes 0, which is just going to simplify to that idea. Now, because it's a radical there, it's a little bit different. But the idea is the same, okay? So when you are doing a binomial with radicals, you can still take your A value squared minus your B value squared. Just pay attention to if there's a radical or not, okay? So it's going to be A value squared minus B value squared, okay? Let me show you. And if you want on these, you guys, when you see conjugates, right, these are conjugates where one is plus and one is minus, but it's the same values. If you see conjugates and you just want to FOIL it every time, you totally can. I just don't think it's the quickest way. But if you want to, by all means, go right ahead, okay? I'm going to show you the shortcut since I already showed you the FOILing options for several problems before this. So what you do is you take your A value and you square it, and you subtract your B value and you square it, okay? So 3 squared is 9 minus the square root of 5 squared is 5, right? When you square root and square, it takes it away. So 9 minus 5 is 4. So if you were to FOIL that, it would have come out to 4 also, okay? Same thing here. Now these are both radicals, but you're still doing the same thing. You're taking your a value and you're squaring it, and then you're subtracting your b value and you're squaring that. Okay, so this is 5 minus 2, or 3. Isn't that nice with the shortcut? You could totally do it with the FOIL. I'm not saying it's wrong to do it with the FOIL. It's going to take you way longer to do a problem like this if you do FOIL it. Okay, there's a lot going on here. These ones are a little bit trickier. You are going to rationalize, and we've done rationalizing in the last few days. It's the same idea. We need to get the radical out of the denominator, and the way that we do that is we multiply by the conjugate of the denominator over itself, really. So just like we rationalized before, here's what it's going to look like. You're going to multiply by 4 minus rad 3 and 4, minus rad 3. Okay, so take the conjugate of this, meaning just change the sign in the middle. Multiply by that over itself, because we want to multiply by 1, right? So we're not changing our value. And now all you do is you're going to FOIL the top, not the stop, the top, and you're going to do the shortcut on bottom. Okay, let me show you. I'm going to start with the bottom. So if we do our shortcut, it's your a value, which is that 4 squared, minus your b value, the square root of 3 squared. Okay, and I'll simplify that in just a minute. On top, you have to FOIL. So on top, it's going to be 2 times 4 is 8, minus 2 rad 3, minus 4 rad 3, and then a negative rad 3 times a negative rad 3 is a positive rad 9, which if you want, you can just call that 3 right off the bat. Okay, so now I have 8 plus 3, which is 11. I have negative 2 rad 3 minus 4 rad 3, so that's a negative 6 rad 3. And then I'm going to put that over 16 minus the square root of 3 squared is just 3. 16 minus 3 is 13. And that's as simple as you can make that. There's nothing that can be reduced. Okay, if all 3 of these had a common factor, then you could reduce it. But they don't, so we're going to leave it just like that. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Go to letter B. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to take a minute, 2 minutes to try this on your own. See if you can come up with the right answer. And when you do, we are done. So I'm going to work it out right now. Hopefully you've worked it out on your own already at this point. Here we go. So if we multiply by the conjugate over itself, it would be 1 plus the square root of 5 and 1 plus the square root of 5. Okay. On top, we're going to FOIL. So 3 plus 3 rad 5 plus 1 rad 5 plus the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is 5, right? It's the square root of 25, which is 5. We're going to put that over, and now we're going to do the shortcut. Your a value squared minus, always minus here, your b value squared. Okay, now simplify. You have up top 3 plus 5 is 8. 3 rad 5 plus 1 rad 5 is plus 4 rad 5. Okay, and then on bottom, you have 1 minus 5. So you have a negative 4. Okay, now here's the deal. All of those you can reduce, right? If we divide everything by a negative 4, we'll get a 1 in our denominator. and that's beautiful because now we don't have that fraction form anymore. So divide by a -4, you get a -2 minus, that's a 1. You don't have to put the 1 there. You can put the 1 there, times rad 5. And it technically is over a 1 then, if we're dividing by a -4. So your best answer here would be -2 minus rad 5. Okay? That is it. If you have any questions, you have so many people in that room with you that can help you. Please don't be bashful. And if you need to, shoot me an email and I can try to explain something over email. It's not ideal, but I will give it my best shot. But really take advantage of the fact that you have people in that room that are learning the same thing as you and maybe have had the same struggle but could talk you through it. So don't be bashful. Get to know each other. I know it's only a weekend, but get to know each other better and help each other out. Okay? Reach out if you need anything.